Hello, everyone. This is the Meltano group conversation at Gitlab. For those who are not familiar, Meltano is a separate product, separate business unit inside the Gitlab organization, where we are building an open source platform for data integration, ELT for the data ops era, as we call it on the website. And this is a group conversation, meaning that people in GitLab can ask us any questions they have about the product, the team, what's been going on for the last couple months. I have planted a couple of questions already, so I'm going to start by handing the mic to Taylor. How have your first 2 months on the team been?
Awesome, thanks, Noah. Yeah, no, they've been a lot of fun. So, small team, tight community, and something that seems to really be taken off with the open source data community is really exciting. I've been involved with Meltano since even before it was called Meltano, and to actually finally be a part of the growth journey of it is really cool. It's something I don't know. It's fun. It's kind of, I was messaging somebody on Reddit today because somebody's asking, like, is Meltano a good tool for this? And they say, like, yeah, we're using it in production, and it's really nice, and it's kind of mind blowing to hear that it's the case. So we've done a lot with only 3 people in the past few months, and it's kind of crazy how much we've done, I think, and I think the community is really excited. One lesson for me so far that I've really come to appreciate is the value of good marketing and good content marketing, where putting good articles out there, doing things that people can read and see and find after the fact, actually has a really profound impact and can create an even greater perception of velocity and value. So I don't know, it's been fun. I love it. I love small teams. I love every day deciding, like, what is the most important, valuable thing that we can do today to move the needle. So it's been fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I've been really impressed by how much of a difference it has just made to have you and AJ on the team for the last 2 months now. We were looking back at the quarter and seeing like how our metrics had improved, and they have been going up like crazy. But then we realized that both you and AJ have only been here for 2 months, and that first month I was still doing everything by myself. But yeah, it's really great to have more hands on deck. Although, like you said, with content marketing and then writing great blog posts, it is kind of hard to kind of separate our time between all the different things we want to do. We have a number of products within our offering right now: Meltano itself, the SDK, we're working on a hub, so we always feel a little bit spread thin. But we have plans to hire a lot in the coming weeks and months, and some really exciting announcements coming up over the next couple of weeks. So let's see if we can keep this going. I'm confident we will. So the next question I dropped in there is for AJ, but it doesn't look like he's on yet. This is usually when he starts work, so he might be dropping in a few moments. But Danielle, you've got a question.
Yeah, congrats on Tap Zoom. That's so cool. I'm curious how you're seeing users use it, and if you see any opportunities for us to do cool things with GitLab's user data with Zoom as an example.
Yes. So Zoom's coming from a consulting firm that the data team is working with, Mashie, and they forked the one from the Singer.io namespace and hosted under the Mashie namespace. So we started to implement that just as I was transitioning over to the Meltano team, and it was kind of part of a push to just kind of pull in a little bit more data from internal use cases. It seems, I think I need to sync up actually with Ved on the data team to see how it's been going, but I haven't heard a ton of problems with it. So yeah, it's great to see that it's discoverable, and we're adding a ton more that maybe aren't discoverable out of the box, but certainly work with Meltano. I don't know if we want to share that yet, but yeah, it's going well. Does that kind of answer your question, Danielle?
Kind of. Other than the data team, do you have other users using it?
I haven't heard anything from the Slack group. Dawa, have you heard anything?
No, I don't. We do have some like tracking happening that might tell us who are using it and at what rates. But a lot of people, of course, disable the tracking, so that's not fully representative. But Taylor, I don't know if you addressed this a second ago, but is GitLab currently actively using the Zoom integration, and what are we doing with that data?
So as far as I know, it is being pulled into the data warehouse. I think there were a couple of questions around doing a full backsync that I know Ved was working on with Mashie. As far as what they're doing with the data, my understanding was going to be just understanding frequency of Zoom calls, similar to what has been done with kind of the Slack metrics. So it's not, an indicator of anything like good or bad, but just an understanding of like the velocity and use of Zoom internally. I don't know that it's made it into any dashboards yet. My sense being that it's a relatively low priority set of data to transform and actually put into a dashboard, but the data is certainly there.
That's interesting because, of course, GitLab has all of these kind of handbook, prescribed guidelines or best practices around not having too many meetings, having meetings be like as short as possible, because meetings, of course, have a habit of filling up the time available for them. So it would be great to see if the lengths of meetings and amounts of meetings per capita basically are increasing over time, because it would mean we're kind of getting away from that best practice. And I guess that's also what we're using the Slack tab for. Does that one actually pull data about DMs versus channel conversations, or is the DM data private and therefore not showing up in that feed?
So I think it can. I don't know that they have set that up given like privacy concerns, because in theory it could join private channels. The Slack data that's being used right now, I think, is just kind of the high level CSV download that basically anybody in the company can see in terms of like percentage of messages that are in DMs versus public channels. And I know I saw Stella on the call that was like a metric of saying like, hey, can we push a certain percentage of conversations from private channels to public channels? And it was never like it's like a lagging indicator of how transparent the people within the company are being. So I think the goal is like 25% to be in public channels, I think. But yeah, so that was being driven just by CSV. I think the goal would be to automate that with Tap Slack. I don't know if that's actually in production yet. I haven't followed up yet.
All right. Thanks for sharing that additional insight, Taylor. Pilar, you've got a question for us as well.
Yes. Hello. How is everyone?
Hello.
In regards to your comment on the impact that marketing can have, I was just curious to know, is there a certain asset that you recommend that we bookmark and maybe share currently? I see some links to a couple of blogs and videos, so I'd love to know if there was one that stands out as being a good resource for us.
Oh, wow. Dow, do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I mean, I wanted to quickly call out this speedrun video I recorded about 2 weeks ago, which shows that you can go from zero to setting up your Meltano project, configuring the GitLab data source integration, as well as the Postgres destination integration, and then running a pipeline within the space of 90 seconds, which is kind of a speed run showing off how easy Meltano makes it to start doing ELT kind of from that developer perspective, where you're just using a CLI and then you've got some files in your drive. So that's a cool one, because people might not be inclined to watch a multi-minute video, but 90 seconds, most people should be able to make that time. The other ones I would like to call out is the Vision blog post Taylor wrote a couple of weeks ago, which is really lays out really well what we're doing today with Meltano, with everything that we have in store too for the rest of the year and the coming quarters, just to kind of show people that if they start using Meltano, it's not just for that data integration bit, but we have this broader vision for data ops. Taylor, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think those were going to be the two I was going to call out. I'm excited about things coming in the future. So I know, we're going to be doing a hard launch of what we're calling the Meltano Hub, which is going to be a single place to find all the plugins for Meltano, but also all available taps and targets within the Singer ecosystem, which is something that members of the Singer community have been asking for. Basically, like, how do I find taps? How do I understand their quality, where they're located, how to install them, and everything. So like, we're gonna have an announcement around that, and then we have another plan to write like the future of Singer is bright, because that's one of the kind of cornerstones of what we've done as a product, is to say we're embracing this open standard for data integration, and we're embracing the community that other companies have let languish, and supporting them in a way that is true to the ethos of open source and actually enables people to do real work in data integration across their data lifecycle. So yeah, those two that Dow mentioned, and I think the next one that we make is the most important one to share.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that, Dow and Taylor. Looks like question.
I wanted to share a quick data point related to the Meltano Hub that Taylor was talking about. There's currently a big kind of discoverability issue in the Singer ecosystem, where there is really just one website that is an attempt at cataloging all of the connectors in the ecosystem, which is the Singer IO website, which was originally set up. But that one currently lists only about 100 different connectors for data sources. And it hasn't been updated in ages. And in order for your plugin to be listed on that website, you need to kind of hand over maintainership to the Stitch organization that runs the Singer IO website. So when we started figuring out, okay, can we build a better hub that actually catalogs all of the taps and targets out there, we weren't necessarily sure how many we were going to find out there in the wild. So we started scraping some data from GitHub to find out how many public repos there are that have the tap prefix and mention Singer. And we found out that there's actually upward of 220 or so different unique connectors built on top of Singer for different data sources. And those will all, once we complete the hub and complete that scraping task, be supported in Meltano kind of out of the box if we collected some additional metadata. And it's just really great to see that the ecosystem is much broader than we had even realized ourselves. And when you compare this library of more than 200 unique connectors to the libraries of proprietary commercial kind of SaaS-based data integration vendors, those usually top out around 150 and they have big in-house teams maintaining them. And it's just really great to see that already today, the open source community around Singer and Meltano has exceeded that massively. So we will be coming in with basically the biggest library of open source connectors out there. And then the hub and these other tools we're building, like the SDK, will also have a big impact on the quality of those and allowing users to find out the health of a lot of those, because of course some of them might not have been updated in 1 or 2 years, which in the case of some APIs is fine if the API is not that fast moving, but in other APIs it might just mean that it's actually out of date. But just having those all be discoverable from the hub will also direct more interest to them and more contributions and activity around keeping those projects up to date. So I'm very excited about having the hub go live soon with that complete list of 200 plus connectors. And then the challenge just becomes getting them all up to the same health level, but they are already there. And that starting point makes a massive difference for users who can start with what already exists and might just need to improve it or fix a couple bugs instead of having to write it from scratch.
And I'll add another point too, is we're using Meltano to set up the data extraction pipeline. So we're using Meltano in a kind of a custom built tap to pull from GitHub. We're pulling that data into S3. We're using DBT through Meltano to transform the data in S3 using Athena. And then we're doing a little bit of manual work on the end to actually get it onto the static site. But we want the hub to be a representative real project of using Meltano for real data integration work. So that's really exciting from my perspective.
All right, Danielle, next question is yours.
Yeah, I'm also super excited to see Meltano Remove. And I know, I can't remember the details, but I feel like there was some like technical trickiness to this one in the past that kind of caused us to not prioritize it. I don't remember if I'm even right about that, but I was just wondering if it's backward compatible to if I added plugins on old versions, or do I need to manually remove those?
Yeah, so my recollection is that it is one of those issues that just didn't get prioritized because it wasn't like a very pressing matter for a while, but there weren't actually any technical reasons why we couldn't. Basically, it just does the exact inverse of Meltano add. So we just had to look at what does Meltano add do. It adds something to the YAML file, it writes some files in this directory, it drops something in the system database, and the remove command does exactly the opposite of that. And the great thing is that this actually came as a community contribution from a company called Metatica, who are building a data product that internally uses Meltano for data integration functionality. So it's really great to kind of see this ecosystem pop up around Meltano of other products being built on top of it, and those teams contributing back to this kind of common core for a lot of data products. Yeah, I wanted to give proper credit there to the Metatica team. Thanks, Ruben Frankel, for contributing the Meltano Remove functionality.
That's so awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think about the next one too. So I was reading the vision doc, and it says Meltano can become the one-stop shop for the majority of data projects, which I love that vision. Obviously, there's a lot of companies who would like to be able to claim that, even like the parent company of Singer. So what differentiates us now or in the future gives us a good shot of being able to realize that vision?
Taylor, what do you think?
Yeah, so I have a couple of thoughts on this. So one of the things I like about the current focus of Meltano is that it's enabling people to get real work done at the beginning of a data lifecycle. So when you decide that you have questions that you want to answer with data, bringing that information together in a centralized place that you can integrate it, transform it, and actually answer those questions is kind of the first part of that journey. So heavily focusing on that, I think is key to some of the success we're seeing. It's a proven market with paid and other open source tools in this space. I think our unique approach is having that developer first focus, having a true open source ethos where this open source is not viewed as a source of free labor. It's like actually supporting a real community around these different projects. Thinking long term for the one-stop shop, there are already, for the different parts of the data lifecycle, really good open source tools and projects. Airflow, Dagster, Prefect for orchestration, Superset, Metabase, Redash for visualization, DBT particularly for transformations. So it's a very similar story to GitLab. I think there are these point solutions that solve problems really well, and Meltano can come in and help you make sense of all of that, integrate them together, configure it, and deploy it all together. And then I think the pitch long term where we want to get to is having that metadata understanding of the value stream, if you will, through the entire data lifecycle. So that starts with knowing what data is going into your data warehouse, where it's coming from, putting some guardrails around that, and then feeding that through the end-to-end system and kind of creating this nice cycle so that if there are problems with your data, you can bring everybody together and understand where the problems are, how that's affecting downstream dashboards and reports. For me, it's like we dealt with this on the data team where we've deployed Airflow, we have different extract and load tools, we have transformation tools, and they don't all really talk together, and it's pain to get them set up to talk to each other. So I think our initial focus is going to be on this extract and load story around the Singer community to kind of build up credibility, start a sustainable project around that. But then we want to focus on the metadata story and being the connective tissue around all of that. And then if there's situations where an open source tool isn't working for the market, or we feel like we have something better to add, then I think in-house we can create something to kind of help supplement the market there and have a better integration story. But yeah, I think there are a lot of tools out there. We want to make them all work together really well. And I see it very similar to kind of the story of GitLab, where originally GitLab was very, and still is, very good at version control and CI. Meltano is going to be very good at extract and load, and we're going to grow from there.
And I want to add one little bit there, especially as it relates to GitLab. GitLab, of course, uses open source technology in things like Git, but still the GitLab platform with all the dozen things it does are all built in-house in one really, kind of cohesive, consistent product where everything is really neatly tied together. And that is a similar vision that some of our kind of competing proprietary data ops products are going, where they're trying to build out the whole platform at once with one big team. But in open source, there, like Taylor pointed out, there's a lot of really great point solutions already, but what's missing really is that connective tissue that makes it easy to get started with something that still feels like a cohesive, entire data lifecycle product without you having to, manually figure out how to get all these tools to have consistent configuration and then have consistent access management and have it all work together in a Git repo and get those advantages of CI/CD. So we're not going to get the GitLab route where we're going to try to kind of re-implement everything ourselves. We can add a lot of value by identifying those best-in-class tools and making them come together into something that becomes better than the sum of its parts. And like Taylor mentioned, down the line, we might come up with our own solutions for those steps, but we also definitely want Meltano to be the stable foundation for data products, even as the actual kind of plugins might evolve over time. We're already seeing that in the data orchestration space, where Airflow was by far the most popular and hottest option a couple of years ago. It's still probably in usage numbers one of the most popular options. But Dagster and Prefect are raising their head, and we want to make sure that Meltano can follow along with the evolution of the data space and the open source data tooling and support all of these new tools that the teams might choose to use just as well as what we supported in the past. With Meltano remaining that stable foundation for the entire data product that can stay with the data team for years and years to come. And by embracing all of these existing open source solutions, we can add a lot of additional value without having to reinvent the wheel and trying to convince people that Meltano transformations are better than DBT, when DBT is actually really great. And we don't really feel particularly that we need to do better there. We can just integrate it better with all of these other tools.
Yeah, I'll say a point kind of reiterating what Dawa said is that we want Meltano to grow with a data team. And so if you're a single data team, founder in a company, you can implement Meltano, and then when you bring on more seasoned data engineers or data analysts, they're not going to come in and be like, oh, you started with Meltano, I got to replace this. Like, no, oh, great, this, I can hit the ground running. We can continue to expand and grow as the needs of the data team grow. I think there's a lot of tools out there that you would implement as a single solo data team professional, that once you bring other people on board, you're like, okay, well, let me rip this out and do it the right way. And I think we want to make Meltano the right choice for many stages of a data team's growth in life.
Awesome. I erased my next question because you answered it. So that was amazing. Thank you. My next question is, I know you made a strategic decision to focus on the command line, which I think looks like it has been a great move and let the community develop a lot faster. What do you think the future looks like for the UI? And do you have a framework for how you would decide when investing in that would make sense again?
Yeah, so it is on the roadmap for later this year to start taking a look at the UI, because people are already playing with the UI and discovering it. And our caveat has always kind of been, hey, we stopped paying attention to this as much, so proceed with caution. The reality is there are people that do just want to use the UI, but we want it to be a good experience on the command line first, and then grow the user interface out from that. So I think our plans right now are later in the year, closer to Q4, is to really start taking a look at that, making sure taps and targets are discoverable, and seeing what work we need to do to really bring the UI up to speed. But right now, our solid command line interface actually, I think, is our competitive differentiator in the open source market.
Yeah, and what I want to add to that is that decision to focus for the moment on an interface that's more technical, kind of developer-like people will prefer, is very much intentional, because in order to build out this ecosystem of high-quality connectors, we need to first get those people on board who are actually comfortable debugging some Python code, contributing fixes back, that like working with software development tools instead of just getting a pretty UI where you click a button and then everything just works, which would be great, and we want to get there. But we need to build this community that can get the ecosystem and the library of connectors there, which means technical people first. But we are seeing that Meltano is picking up a lot of kind of traction in consulting firms, for example, that set up data products and or projects for their clients, and in many cases build custom connectors for their clients. But then these clients are more likely to be less technical, and they just want to have a pretty UI where they can enter their credentials and maybe change the schedule or connect it with a different database at some point. So we are primarily hearing from these consulting firms where their own teams are comfortable with the CLI and YAML files and Git repos, but their kind of clients, end users are not. For this reason, we have also been receiving some contributions to the UI from these consulting firms, but that will become something that we will focus on more, like Taylor mentioned, near the end of the year, when we also think that library of Singer connectors will have reached a higher kind of quality level where you can actually come in and expect them to just work, instead of the state today where there probably are going to be some error messages we'll run into, and they're not super hard to resolve, but you do need to be comfortable reading stack traces and understanding why your config key might have been wrong. And we want to get the ecosystem to a place where you can actually expect it to just work before we implement the interface for those people who do expect it to just work.
Awesome. Last question. I get all the email updates, and I just want to say congratulations on how much you've shipped and the community has shipped. It's just awesome to see, the heartbeat. What are you just each most proud of since the last GC, if you had to pick just one thing to highlight?
For me, this is something that I don't know how much actually moves the needle in the community. One of the things I did coming in was basically reading through all of our documentation, all of the documentation on the Singer IO website, and I rewrote the Singer specification to have like a basic and an advanced set of levels, just so we talk about Singer and like what is. Oh, thank you, Sid, for dropping that link. What is the Singer spec? So I rewrote it with keeping these kind of basic and advanced measures in mind, and I think once we put that out there, one, it gives me great confidence that I fully understand what the spec is actually doing now. And two, I've heard people message me just like, oh, this answers a lot of questions that I'd always had about Singer and its specification. And now it's in a nice, easy place. And I think it's something, we're not like trying to take over the Singer specification or anything like that. I was just like, this is something that I think needs to exist. And I really enjoyed doing that. I think it was helpful for myself and the community.
Yeah, and for me, the answer would be the SDK for building dApps and soon also targets that we launched about a month and a half ago, or I think a month ago, which makes it so much easier to build new connectors and also reduces the maintenance burden for going forward, because all of these Singer specific bits have been moved into the SDK so that individual connectors only need to override some integration points with source specific logic, meaning that it's going to be much easier to maintain it over time and also maintain consistency in behavior and performance between different connectors. And we have received reports from the community that porting one of their existing connectors to the SDK reduced the code's footprint by 70%. So that means that there's way less code for them to worry about, way less surface area for potential bugs, and just maintenance and contributions down the line for new people is going to be so much easier because they won't be overwhelmed with all of this code that assumes the Singer spec inside and out, because all of that is kind of refactored away, abstracted away. So and it's just really great to kind of start launching new products in the Meltano suite of tools, and then the hub is a new property also that we're launching soon. So we are on time. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time in the group conversation today. We will be posting this on our blog for those who want to read it later. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.